She looked me dead in the eye, floating in my pool, and said, "This is community property now. I almost dropped my groceries because what?" HOA Karen claimed my pool was community property, so I filled it with glow-in-the-dark slime. Part 1. The Woman in the Sun Hat and the Audacity. There she was, doing lazy laps in my pool, like she'd just checked into a 5-star spa. A wide-brimmed sun hat shaded her smug smile. And she was sipping from a wine glass like the chlorine was hers to flavor. I stood frozen at the gate, still holding my grocery bag in one hand. This had to be a joke, right? But no. Karen saw me, waved her fingers like I was the help, and said, "Oh, honey, this is a community pool now." And the worst part? She meant it. There was no sarcasm in her voice, no trace of embarrassment, just entitlement, served chilled with white wine and sunscreen. That single sentence, "This is a community pool now," was when I realized something was deeply, fundamentally wrong with this neighborhood. I'd only been here for 3 weeks. Just 3. Moved in for the peace, the privacy, the promise of suburban quiet at the end of a cul-de-sac. What I got instead was a clipboard-wielding queen bee who decided my personal property was her HOA playground. And that pool she was floating in? That wasn't just some backyard feature. That was my dream. A custom-built oasis I'd designed down to every tile, with underwater LED lights, a cascading waterfall, and a heating system I'd obsessed over for months. That pool was my reward for years of hard work. And now, apparently, Karen thought it belonged to the community. She floated toward the deep end like a Roman empress while I stood there, still blinking in disbelief. I hadn't even unpacked all my boxes, hadn't even found my coffee maker yet. And already, I was under siege. Not from burglars, not from wild animals, but from something far more dangerous. HOA Karen. Part 2. Lemon bars, a clipboard, and a trap I didn't see coming. I met her the very day I moved in. There was a knock on the door. I opened it, still sweaty from unpacking, and there she stood, Karen, smiling wide, holding a plate of lemon bars in one hand and a clipboard in the other, like it was an extension of her soul. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she chirped. "I'm Karen, HOA president for our lovely community." Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, and her tone had the forced cheer of someone who gives compliments with teeth. Before I could even introduce myself, she launched in, "Have you read through the HOA guidelines yet?" "Oh, don't worry if you haven't. I brought you a copy." She held up a thick plastic binder like it was sacred scripture, and told me she'd swing by later to go over it together. I was still trying to figure out which box had my coffee maker. And here she was, ready to quote bylaws like she was auditioning for a courtroom drama. At the time, I thought she was just overly organized, maybe a little pushy, but she seemed nice enough. I even thanked her. Later that week, once my pool was complete, I made the mistake of inviting her over for a peek. You know, just being neighborly. She stepped into my backyard like a home inspector with a hidden agenda. Slow, precise footsteps, eyes scanning every corner, making little noises like she was mentally redesigning the place. She circled the pool, commented on the tiles, asked if I had considered adding a safety railing. And then, casually, she dropped this line. "Would you be open to hosting an HOA event here sometime?" I laughed, because I thought she was kidding. She didn't laugh back. Her face stayed stone-cold serious. It was the first real warning sign, and I missed it. But not for long, because 10 days later, I would wake up to giggles, splashes, and the smell of sangria drifting through my window. Karen hadn't just been scouting. She'd been planning. Part 3. The Trespassing Spa Day, and the clause that changed everything. It started with laughter. Not the kind that makes you smile, the kind that makes your stomach twist because you know something's off. I walked to my window, still in pajamas, and froze. There were 3 women, fully reclined on beach chairs I didn't own, sunglasses on, fruity drinks in hand, treating my backyard like it was Club Med. And there, at the shallow end of my pool, sat Karen. Her feet dipped lazily in the water, head tilted back, like she was queen of the HOA resort. One of the women saw me standing there and waved. "This pool is amazing. Thank you for sharing." I blinked. Sharing? I stormed outside, heart racing, voice trembling. "Karen, what on earth is going on here?" She barely looked up. "Oh, I thought you understood," she said ever so sweetly. "This pool, it's such a beautiful asset to the neighborhood. Under the HOA beautification clause, any feature that enhances community value is open to shared use, unless explicitly exempted." I stared at her. "You're telling me, that my private pool mabadaset is now a community amenity?" She smiled and took another sip. "I just assumed you were being generous." My jaw practically hit the concrete. I told her, clearly and directly, that this was my property, my home, my pool, and I never, ever agreed to turn it into the neighborhood splash zone. She gave me a shrug, tossed her towel over one shoulder, and said, "Check page 43 of the binder. You'll find the clause there." Then, like I had just interrupted her meditation, she turned back to her wine and ignored me completely. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, flipping through every single page of that stupid binder, lawn regulations, trash bin visibility charts, approved exterior paint colors, and then, there it was, a paragraph buried in HOA legalese, so vague it practically oozed with loopholes. Shared access may be granted to features that significantly contribute to community cohesion and beautification. No mention of pools, no mention of private property, just enough wiggle room for Karen to squeeze in her insanity. I slammed the binder shut. No more smiles, no more politeness. If she wanted a war, she just got one. Part 4. Signs, locks, and sticky revenge. By sunrise, I was in full defense mode. I printed 3 bold signs. Private property, no trespassing. HOA rules do not apply. I zip-tied them to the gate, to the fence, and right onto the pool ladder. Then, I went a step further. I installed a brand new lock on the backyard gate. Not just any lock, a coded keypad lock with a random pin that only I knew. It felt good. Like I'd drawn a solid line between my life and Karen's fantasy world, where property lines were just suggestions. But that peace didn't even last a full day. The next morning, I stepped outside, coffee in hand, and stopped dead in my tracks. The signs, all 3 of them, were gone. Ripped right off the hinges. The keypad, smeared with something sticky, gross, almost fruity, like someone had attacked it with jam or syrup, and then the smell hit me. That unmistakable blend of cheap sangria and sunblock, lingering in the air, like a bad memory. I looked down. Wet footprints trailed across my patio, leading straight from the gate to the diving board. She'd been here again. I gritted my teeth and stormed over to her house. Karen opened the door wearing yoga pants, a tank top that said, "Good vibes only," and the exact same smile that had first made my skin crawl. "Good morning," she said, like nothing had happened. I didn't waste time. "You trespassed," Again! You took down my signs. You smeared something all over my keypad, and you used my pool without permission. She tilted her head and gave me the same condescending tone you'd use on a toddler mid-tantrum. You know, your energy is very disruptive, she said softly. This neighborhood thrives on cooperation. You're new here. Maybe try blending in. I stared at her, stunned. She was gaslighting me. This is my house, I told her. My pool. You have no right. She reached out, actually patted me on the shoulder, and said, "Bless your heart. You'll learn." Then she shut the door, right in my face. That's when I knew I couldn't just argue with her. I needed proof, solid, undeniable evidence, and a plan. So that night, I installed 2 hidden cameras, one pointed straight at the pool, the other at the gate. Karen had just crossed the line, and I was about to draw one with glow-in-the-dark slime. Part 5, Midnight Intrusion, and the HOA's favorite word, coincidence. That night, I stayed up. No TV, no music, just me, a dark room, and 2 camera feeds glowing on my laptop screen. At exactly 11:32 p.m., movement. Karen. She slipped through the gate like she'd done it 100 times before, carrying that same oversized tote bag slung over one shoulder. It jingled softly. Bottles clinking. Wine. Of course. She walked straight to the pool, barefoot, paused, looked around like she was scouting for security guards, and made herself comfortable. 30 minutes later, they arrived. 6 people, all dressed for a spa day, not a covert crime. One woman even had a tray of snacks. They poured drinks, turned on my pool lights. Someone blasted music from a Bluetooth speaker. One guy inflated a pink flamingo float. They laughed, they danced, they swam, like they were hosting a private resort opening. I sat there, stunned, not angry, not even surprised anymore, just numb. At 2 a.m., they packed up and left, giggling like teenagers who'd TP'd the principal's house. That was it, the last straw. The next morning, I didn't knock on Karen's door. I went straight to the HOA board meeting. Tablet in hand, camera footage queued up, voice steady. I walked in, plugged into their screen, and hit play. The room was silent, until Karen let out a gasp so dramatic, it deserved a standing ovation. She clutched her chest. "Oh my goodness, I have no idea how that gate got opened." She blinked rapidly. "It must have been a coincidence. Maybe someone cloned the keypad code." Linda, her loyal backup dancer on the board, nodded in fake sympathy. "Looks like a misunderstanding," she muttered. Another board member, clearly bored, sighed. "Well, let's discuss it at a future date." And just like that, they swept it under the rug. Karen sat back in her chair, folded her hands, and smiled at me. Smiled, as if to say, "You thought proof would matter?" And in that moment, something shifted in me. I wasn't irritated anymore. I wasn't frustrated. I was locked in. This wasn't just about a pool. This was war. And if Karen wanted to keep playing games, she had no idea what I was about to do next. Part 6. The rules, the letters, and the HOA's silent weapon from that moment on. Everything changed. Karen wasn't just smirking anymore. She was escalating. The next morning, I found a warning letter taped to my front door, in bright red ink. "Violation. Unauthorized solar lights." What? I had installed 2 tiny motion lights by the side gate, barely brighter than a candle. But to Karen, they were apparently a visual disruption to the aesthetic integrity of the neighborhood. That same night, I got another violation. This time, noise complaint For watching a documentary with my window shut. The next day, someone dropped a folded pamphlet in my mailbox. No envelope, no return name, just bold text. Neighborly conduct and conflict resolution. Inside, tips like, compromise brings harmony, and those who stand alone often fall. It wasn't just pettiness anymore, it was precision. Every move Karen made was calculated, meant to corner me, wear me down, drown me in technicalities. And somehow, she was doing it all with a smile. I knew she was behind it, but she never signed her name, never sent an email. She didn't need to. She had the HOA board in her back pocket, a small group of equally bored, equally power-hungry enablers who rubber-stamped her every move. I started keeping records, photos, timestamps, a folder labeled Karen Proof. And then I called my lawyer again. He was sympathetic, but blunt. Legally, you can fight this, but challenging HOA citations takes time. And money. Especially with vague clauses like these. They're written to be open to interpretation. I asked him how long it might take to push back. Months, he said. Maybe longer. I needed something better. Something faster. Something that didn't depend on Karen's friends. Or a sluggish legal system. I didn't want to just stop her. I wanted to flip the board. Break the illusion of control she'd built. And that's when it hit me. Late one night. While scrolling mindlessly through social media. A viral prank video. A guy had filled his entire pool with glow-in-the-dark slime and made his friends think it was radioactive waste. At first, I laughed. Then I paused. Then I stared at the screen in silence. The idea came together instantly. Karen wanted to turn my pool into her personal bragging right? Fine. Let her. Because next time she stepped into it, she'd be stepping into my trap. Part 7. Slime. Schemes. And the spark of revenge. It started with a smirk and a shopping cart full of industrial-grade slime ingredients, 4 giant barrels, each labeled with strange codes and eco-safe certifications. Like I was building a science project for mad geniuses, the guy at the supply store gave me a weird look. "Pool party?" he asked. I just smiled. You could say that. Back home, I turned my garage into a lab. Every night. I worked in silence, windows covered, lights low, just me and gallons of glowing goo. I started testing small batches in a kiddie pool behind the shed. The first batch, too thin. Second, too thick. The third, perfect. Under a blacklight. It shimmered like radioactive jelly. Bright neon green with a subtle blue edge, mesmerizing, and just disturbing enough to make people think twice. And the best part? It was completely safe, non-toxic, biodegradable. I even emailed the manufacturer to confirm it wouldn't mess with my pool's filtration system. It left a faint, harmless stain on skin and fabric, lasting just a few hours. But visually, it looked like you'd fallen into a vat of alien ooze, exactly what I wanted. I added one more touch. A color-reactive powder that clung to anything wet and glowed brighter under LED lights. It wouldn't hurt anyone, but it would definitely leave a mark. I tested it on an old t-shirt. 15 minutes in the slime, and it looked like a costume for a nuclear meltdown movie. Poetic, beautiful, ready. Now, all I needed was the perfect excuse to deploy it. And as if the universe was playing back up to my plan, the opportunity came right on schedule. The HOA newsletter hit my mailbox that Friday. And guess what was inside? A pastel-colored flyer titled Neighborhood Appreciation Day, and printed, bold and proud, on the front, a full-color photo of my pool. No request, no warning. Just a note that read, "Join us for swimming, wine tasting, and snacks at our beautiful community pool." I had to read it twice. She'd done it again. Used my backyard as a public event without even knocking on the door. Karen wanted a show. She wanted attention. She wanted control. But on Saturday night, she was going to dive into the biggest, slimiest, glow-in-the-dark disaster this HOA had ever seen. Part 8. The Calm Before the Slime. Saturday morning came. Sunny. Cheerful. Deceptive. On the surface, the neighborhood was gearing up for celebration. Folding tables were being set up on driveways. Paper lanterns swayed gently from tree branches. And Karen? She was gliding up and down the street, clipboard in hand, like a general preparing for parade day. I watched from behind the curtain, expression calm, but heart racing. This wasn't just an HOA event. This was her moment. Her grand vision of suburban royalty, and my pool was supposed to be her crown jewel. By noon, the flyers were everywhere. People were setting up wine coolers, plastic champagne flutes, and trays of overpriced cupcakes. Someone even hung a glitter sign near the mailbox that read, "Together we shine." Ironic, because what was about to happen would shine in a way no one expected. At 3 p.m., I opened my garage. Inside, 4 barrels, each sealed tight, glowing faintly under the shadowed light. I'd marked them with a single red X. Not for drama, but because even I wanted to remember. This wasn't just payback. It was a message. I drained half the water in the pool first, just enough to make room for the mix. Then, one by one, I poured the contents of each barrel into the water. The scent was strange, a weird mix of lime candy and Windex. I stirred the pool slowly using a long broom handle, the way you'd mix a potion in a fantasy novel. And slowly, the water transformed. Gone was the clear blue shimmer. Now it glowed, softly at first, then brighter, until it looked like I'd captured a piece of the aurora borealis and poured it into my backyard. It pulsed, shifted under the light, like it was alive. Even I was impressed. Then I laid the final piece of the puzzle, a thick, double-layered pool tarp stretched and weighted across the surface. And, on top of it, a laminated sign. Pool under treatment. Do not enter. Was it believable? Not really, but I didn't need believable. I just needed stall time. The goal wasn't to keep them out. It was to let them choose to go in. Because when HOA Karen finally lifted that tarp later tonight, she'd be lifting the curtain on her own downfall. Part 9. Guests, gossip, and the gate begins to creak as the afternoon rolled in. So did the guests. SUVs, golf carts, pastel dresses. Laughter floated through the street like a scented fog of smugness. Karen was in full form, walking from house to house, giving directions, handing out souvenir fans printed with, "Community starts with us." She had that same clipboard, hugged to her chest like a holy relic, and that voice sharp, bright, and just fake enough to make your skin crawl. From my window, I watched it all, calm on the outside. But inside, I was a storm in still water. The barrels were now tucked away, the tarp was in place, and the slime was glowing faintly beneath the cover, waiting. At 6:15 p.m., the first person walked past my fence, peering between the slats. Then another. I heard murmurs. "Is the pool ready?" I thought it was being used for the wine tasting. I didn't answer. Another knock, this time louder, followed by a voice I knew far too well. "Just wanted to let you know, we're about to start the neighborhood toast." Then, silence. I peeked through the curtain. Karen stood at my gate, surrounded by 2 women in floppy hats and a man holding a wine bottle like a trophy. She pointed at the tarp and made a face like she was reading a menu she didn't like. Then, She laughed. I couldn't hear it, but her body language said it all. A dismissive wave, a shrug of her shoulders, a little smug head tilt. She turned around and led her group back toward the sidewalk. The message was clear. This is mine, and I'll use it when I'm ready. I checked the cameras. The pool lights were still off, the tarp still sealed. But that wouldn't last much longer. Sunset was coming, and when the lanterns came on and the rosé flowed freely, someone was going to lift that tarp. And when they did, they'd find the glow, they'd step into the slime, and they'd learn once and for all that I don't share well with trespassers. Part 10, The Reveal, and The Slime Show, begins just before sunset. I made my move. I walked to the gate from inside, unlatched it quietly, peeled back the pool tarp with deliberate care, and turned on the lights. It was like flipping a switch on a neon nightmare. The water, if you could even call it that anymore, glowed with a ghostly green shimmer, a swirling mass of electric color that pulsed beneath the surface, like the whole pool had been cursed by a radioactive jellyfish. It was mesmerizing, hypnotic, just unsettling enough to make you hesitate, unless, of course, you were Karen. I returned inside, sat calmly, and waited. The security camera flickered softly in the corner. And then, the gate creaked. There she was, barefoot, flowing white sarong, wine glass still in hand like it was glued there by divine entitlement. Behind her were 4 more people, 1 man, 2 women, and a teenager holding a Bluetooth speaker. They paused, looked at the pool like they'd stumbled upon Atlantis. Karen stepped forward first, tilted her head, and said something that made the others laugh. She bent down, ran her fingers through the slime-coated water, then, with the confidence of a queen walking on red carpet, she stepped in. At first, nothing, just the splash of her foot and a soft ripple across the glowing surface. Then, the shift. Her smile faded slightly. Her other foot followed in, and that's when the texture hit her. The slime clung, not sticky, but thick, like wading through melted gelatin with a mind of its own. She took another step, and the glow deepened, casting eerie light across her legs, her robe, the patio tiles. She tried to act natural, tried to laugh it off, but then she slipped, just a little, grabbing the rail with one hand. The others hesitated. The teenager stepped back. One of the women dipped a toe in and yanked it out instantly. "Oh my God, what is that?" Another leaned forward to help Karen and shrieked as the slime splashed onto her crisp white blouse, staining it a blinding neon green. Karen turned, now waist-deep, robe floating like seaweed around her. Her expression? Confusion, annoyance, a flicker of panic. She started to wade back, but every step made a thick squelch, like the pool itself didn't want to let her go. Her hair stuck to her shoulders. Her sarong had turned into a glowing, tangled flag of defeat. By the time she reached the edge, she looked less like a poolside goddess and more like the Statue of Liberty dipped in fluorescent glue, and that was my cue. I stepped outside, phone in hand, smile in place, voice calm. "Everything okay out here?" Karen spun toward me, glowing like a nuclear highlighter, and screamed, "What did you do?" Part 11. The glow, the gasp, and the warning. She ignored. Karen stood there, soaked, dripping, covered from the waist down in glowing slime that clung like melted plastic wrap. Her robe floated in pieces around her, hair plastered to her cheeks, arms glowing like she'd wrestled a radioactive octopus. Behind her, the others were already backing away. One man raised his phone, filming. A woman pulled out tissues, trying to wipe neon off her blouse, which only made it worse. Karen's voice cracked like static. "What did you do?" I blinked, then looked over at the pool, back at her, then calmly pointed to the laminated sign still dangling from the fence. "Pool under treatment. Do not enter." I shrugged. "Oh, you didn't see the sign?" She narrowed her glowing eyes. "You sabotaged this event. You humiliated me in front of everyone." Another guest, already halfway to the sidewalk, muttered, "Pretty sure you did that to yourself." Karen spun around, fists clenched, dripping neon across my patio. "You did this on purpose." I nodded slowly. "If by this you mean you broke into my property, ignored a posted warning, and took a dip in a clearly treated pool, then yeah." I held up my phone. "Don't worry. I recorded everything. For safety." The guy with the wine bottle laughed under his breath. "This is like HOA Twilight Zone." Karen looked at her crew, but there was no support, no sympathy, just retreat. One woman whispered, "I think we should go." And just like that, they left. One by one, dripping, muttering, glowing, leaving Karen alone in the middle of my yard, slimed, stunned, and staring at the one person she never thought would fight back. Me. I let the silence hang, long enough to sting, long enough for her to feel the weight of it. Then I stepped back through my patio door and clicked the lock behind me. She didn't follow. She didn't knock. She just stood there, glowing, alone, and exactly where she chose to be. Part 12. Viral Vengeance and a Glowing Reputation. By the time I went to bed that night, Karen had no idea what was coming next, but the internet did. I hadn't planned to upload the footage right away. Truly, I hadn't. But when I sat down, reviewed the camera angle, and saw Karen glowing like a rejected Marvel villain while screeching into the night, I couldn't help myself. I blurred all the faces, muted the sound, trimmed the footage just enough to keep it ambiguous, and gave it a title designed for curiosity. Entitled Neighbor Ignores Warning Signs, Jumps into Glowing Pool. That was it. No names, no addresses, just vibes. And apparently, that was all the internet needed. Within hours, views exploded. Comments flooded in. "Bro, what's in that water?" "Karen really said radioactive. Please. This is suburban warfare, and I love it." Speculation ran wild. Some said it was staged. Others thought it was real. A few were convinced I had filled the pool with toxic waste. My favorite theory? It's a new anti-aging treatment gone wrong. I didn't say a word, didn't confirm, didn't deny, just watched the chaos unfold from behind my cup of coffee, smiling. But then, the video found its way home. Someone in the neighborhood shared it on the local HOA Facebook group. Within minutes, the comment section exploded. Some were outraged, some were entertained, and a surprising number started sharing their own Karen horror stories. Like dominoes, they fell. One neighbor posted, "She fined me for having a garden gnome that didn't match my porch trim." Another, "She reported my 6-year-old's lemonade stand for not having a permit." Even the quiet ones, the ones who'd never spoken a word at board meetings, started chiming in. It wasn't just about the slime anymore. This was a reckoning. And Karen was the queen whose castle had just started to crumble. Part 13. The Emergency Meeting and Karen's Last Act. It took her exactly 2 days, just 48 hours after the glow-in-the-dark debacle. Karen called for an emergency HOA meeting. The email subject line? Urgent. Neighborhood safety and misinformation crisis. Classic Karen. I showed up early. Not to speak. Just to watch. The meeting was held in the community center. Folding chairs, stale coffee, fluorescent lights that made everyone look guilty. Then she walked in. Karen. Wearing sunglasses indoors, a long-sleeved blouse buttoned up to her throat, her signature clipboard hugged tightly to her chest. She looked like a war general hiding the aftermath of a slime grenade. The room? Dead silent. Not out of respect, but disbelief. She marched to the front, cleared her throat dramatically, and launched into a monologue. "I have been the victim," she said, voice shaking, "of a calculated smear campaign." She called the slime an act of chemical aggression. She said the video was a deepfake. She claimed the entire event was staged to destroy her reputation and destabilize community leadership. The words character assassination left her mouth with such conviction, someone in the back choked on their coffee trying to suppress a laugh. She held up her clipboard like it was a legal document and said, "I will not be silenced by mob mentality." That's when I raised my hand. The chairwoman, a woman named Cheryl, who had been suspiciously quiet in recent months, sighed and gave me a small nod. I stood, calm, unshaken. "Has the board had time," I asked Sodier, "to review the footage I submitted? The trespassing, the dog incident, the violation timeline?" Before anyone could respond, Karen spun toward me, eyes wide, voice rising. "You liar! You've been manipulating everything from the beginning. This was your plan. You're a fraud." The room gasped, not because of what she said, but because of how quickly she lost control. That was the moment everything cracked. A woman from the second row stood up, quiet, soft-spoken, always neutral, and said, "I've seen Karen enter his yard without permission. More than once." Then a man added, "She fined me for leaving my trash bins out for 15 extra minutes, but held a board meeting in her driveway with open wine bottles." The chairwoman looked visibly exhausted. The air thickened. Not the kind that breaks into yelling, but the kind that signals something real is about to shift. Karen opened her mouth again, but no one listened. No one defended her. The meeting didn't end with a bang. It ended with a vote, and for the first time, not even Linda, Karen's most loyal ally, raised her hand to support her. It was unanimous. Karen was removed from her position as HOA president. Just like that. Her face drained of color, then flushed red with rage. She clutched her clipboard like a sinking life raft, spun on her heel, and slammed the door so hard that part of the frame cracked. No one followed. No one spoke. For a long moment, there was just silence, the kind that feels like justice. Part 14. Flyers, Facebook, and the Desperate Queen. Without a throne. The fallout came fast. Karen, stripped of her title, didn't vanish. She doubled down. Within 24 hours, flyers started appearing, slapped onto front doors, taped to mailboxes, stuffed into garden fences. They were printed in bold red and blue fonts like some political campaign from 1996, and screamed phrases like, "Neighborhood unity is under attack," "Don't believe the lies, your real president speaks." Each one had her signature at the bottom, and a new slogan she must have made up in a rage. "Restore order. Restore Karen." I didn't tear mine down. I left it on the door like a trophy fluttering in the breeze. Then came the Facebook posts. Paragraph after paragraph, walls of text written in all caps, accusing me of harassment, cyberbullying, and chemical warfare. One even claimed I had hired actors to play party guests and slime her on camera, I almost laughed out loud. But the best part? No one cared. The neighbors had made up their minds. The spell was broken. A group of residents even started meeting up on Friday evenings, on someone's driveway, drinks in hand, just to talk. No agenda, no clipboard, just people. And Karen? She would sometimes drive by, slowly, windows up, staring, but never stopping. She had become a ghost in her own kingdom. And while I stayed quiet publicly behind the scenes, I moved forward. With Cheryl, the new acting chairwoman, I submitted a formal civil suit: trespassing, defamation, destruction of property, harassment. The evidence was overwhelming: video, audio, screenshots. Even old HOA notices she had weaponized against me. My lawyer called it the cleanest case of targeted retaliation I've ever seen. The court date was set, 2 months out, plenty of time, plenty of peace. And in the meantime, Karen? She kept trying. More flyers, more Facebook vents, more door knocks answered by silence. She was still trying to fight a battle that she had already lost. And that's when I realized something. Karen didn't care about community. She cared about control. And when she lost it, she didn't know who she was anymore. Part 15. The lawsuit, and the beginning of the end. The envelope was thick, stamped and sealed with the weight of everything I'd endured. Inside, a formal civil complaint, filed, documented, and backed by pages of evidence. Karen was being sued: trespassing, property damage, harassment, defamation, and unlike her flyers, this paper carried real consequences. When she received it, she didn't scream, didn't storm my door. She went quiet for a while. But her cousin didn't. See, her cousin, the same one who once called himself the HOA's unofficial legal consultant, sent me a cease and desist letter. It was laughable. It accused me of everything from emotional terrorism to digital sabotage. Said I had cyberbullied a vulnerable volunteer into public disgrace. My lawyer read it and burst out laughing on the phone. "There's no legal foundation here," he said. "In fact, if anything, this just strengthens your case." We submitted our own official response: calm, professional, airtight. And just like that, Karen's scare tactics ran out of ink, but she wasn't done making noise. The next week, more HOA complaints showed up in my mailbox. One said my mailbox lettering was 1/16 of an inch too tall. Another claimed I had committed a violation by parking my car too close to the curb, even though it was fully in my driveway. She was grasping at straws, trying to regain control any way she could. But the neighborhood wasn't buying it anymore. They saw the desperation. They saw the pattern. And best of all, they started talking. Late one afternoon, I came home to see a group of neighbors chatting across the street. They waved me over. Turns out, they were forming a new neighborhood committee, one not affiliated with Karen's legacy, one that actually cared about community, not control. Someone joked, "We should call it the NHA." I raised an eyebrow. "Neighborhood?" He grinned. "Hands-off association." We all laughed, and for the first time since moving in, I didn't feel like the outsider anymore. I felt home. Part 16, the black pool, and the final straw. It started with a smell, a sharp chemical stench, the kind that doesn't belong anywhere near water. It was a breezy Sunday morning. I stepped out onto the patio, coffee in hand, expecting the usual peace and sunlight. Instead, I gagged. The scent hit me like a slap: burnt plastic, motor oil, something sour and metallic mixed in. I rushed to the pool and froze. The water was black, not murky, not cloudy, black, thick, still, like someone had poured gallons of ink into it, then stirred it until it swallowed the light. No glow, no shimmer, just oily, lifeless sludge. At first, I thought maybe it was an accident, a broken pump, algae, maybe a prank by some neighborhood kids who saw the viral slime video, but deep down, I already knew. I ran to check the cameras. The footage was grainy, low light from the motion sensor, but the figure was clear. Karen, dressed in all black, hood pulled low, carrying two massive jugs, one in each hand. She moved slowly, deliberately, stopped at the gate, looked directly at the camera, like she knew it was there. Then walked straight to the edge of the pool. She poured one jug in, then the other. Smooth, steady, like she was watering her garden. No flinch, no hesitation. Then she walked out, closed the gate behind her. Gone. I stood there, jaw clenched, fists shaking. This wasn't just trespassing, this was vandalism, deliberate, personal. I called the police. An officer came by within the hour, took a report, asked questions. Was the gate locked? Yes. Was the suspect known to me? Oh, yes. Did I have video evidence? Crystal clear. He watched the footage, sighed, and said what I feared most. Without a physical confrontation or damage estimate, it might be tough to press charges right away, but we'll document it. I thanked him, but I wasn't done. I called my lawyer, sent the video, took photos of the pool from every angle. Then, I called a pool specialist. He stared into the black goo for 5 seconds before saying, "This isn't an accident." He estimated thousands of dollars in cleanup, pump replacement, and chemical treatment. I wrote everything down, timeline, costs, statements. And when I sent it to my lawyer, he said 8 words I'd been waiting to hear for months. We have everything we need to bury her. Part 17, the USB drive and the look that broke Karen. 2 days later, another HOA meeting was called. Official reason? To address the growing unrest and complaints regarding community leadership. Unofficially, everyone knew why we were gathering. Karen walked in like nothing had happened. Same blazer, same smug tilt of her chin, clipboard in hand, like her personal shield. But the room had changed. No one stood when she entered. No one smiled. The air felt heavy, like the truth was waiting, just beneath the surface. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I didn't even look at Karen. I simply held up a USB drive and said, "I'd like to share something with the group." Cheryl, the new chairwoman, hesitated for a second, then gave a quiet nod. I walked up, plugged it in, and hit play. The room went silent. On the projector, grainy but clear, appeared the figure of Karen, black hoodie, gloved hands, 2 jugs of something thick and dark. She walked to my pool, paused, then turned her face right into the camera. Gasps echoed. She dumped the liquid, slow, intentional, then turned and walked away. No panic, no shame, just satisfaction. When the video ended, no one spoke. Karen didn't move. Her hands tightened around her clipboard like it might save her from drowning in silence. Then someone laughed, quietly, from the back. Another person whispered, "Oh my God!" And finally, Karen stood. She tried to laugh. "It's doctored," she said. "That's not me. This is revenge. This is a setup." She looked at Cheryl, desperate now. "This is a personal vendetta against me and my leadership. It's harassment!" But Cheryl didn't blink. Instead, she said 4 words that rang through the entire room. "We've seen enough, Karen." Karen froze. Someone asked, "Are we voting?" Cheryl nodded. And when the hands went up, not one lifted for Karen. Not even Linda. The vote was unanimous. Karen's final thread of power was gone. She stood trembling, then slammed her clipboard down so hard a pen flew across the room. "You're all cowards," she shouted. "This is a witch hunt, and it all started because of a stupid pool." Then she stormed out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the projector screen. No one chased after her. No one even moved. The silence she left behind was the sound of a neighborhood exhaling. Part 18. The courtroom, and the verdict that finally closed the gate. 2 months later. The court date arrived. I wore a simple suit. Karen showed up in a blazer one size too stiff, and brought her cousin again. Yes, that cousin. The so-called legal consultant who had written half those twisted HOA bylaws. He carried a briefcase full of arrogance and paperwork that was already outdated. We stood on opposite sides of the courtroom. I didn't look at her. She didn't look at me. My lawyer, calm, precise, razor-sharp. He presented everything. The video of her pouring the black liquid into my pool, the past violations, the history of harassment, the property damage report, and the total cost of repairs backed by the specialist's testimony. Karen didn't say a word until the judge asked if she wanted to make a statement. She stood, arms crossed, eyes tight. "This is a smear campaign," she said. "All of this was staged. He's obsessed with ruining me." Her voice cracked on the word obsessed. The judge didn't even flinch. He looked over the evidence again. Then back at Karen. His tone was calm, final. "I don't see any obsession here, Ms. Taylor. What I see is repeated trespassing, malicious property damage, and coordinated harassment." Karen blinked. He continued, "I'm awarding the plaintiff full compensation for pool restoration and legal fees." She didn't breathe. "And I am granting a no trespass order. 5 years minimum. If you step onto his property again, you'll be arrested." Karen didn't protest. She didn't scream this time. She just stood there, eyes hollow, and nodded once. The gavel dropped, case closed. She gathered her papers, turned without a word, and walked out of the courtroom. No drama, no clipboard, just silence. That was the last time I saw her in person. Part 19. Refunds, rewrites, and a neighborhood that could finally breathe. Karen disappeared after the ruling. No dramatic exit, no final flyer, no "I'll be back" speech. Just gone. Some said she moved to a condo across town. Others whispered she was still around, hiding inside her house, too embarrassed to show her face. Honestly, I didn't care, because what followed was change. Real change. Dolores, the retired school teacher who had replaced Karen as HOA president, stepped up with quiet grace. No clipboard, no condescension, just clarity. Within a month, she rewrote the bylaws. Every rule required a vote. Every complaint had to be logged transparently. She called a full community audit, and the results? Stunning. Nearly half of the violations Karen had issued in her final year were invalid. One neighbor had been fined for a lawn ornament violation. It was a bird bath. Another? Cited for excessive patio decor. She had 2 string lights and a pumpkin. Refunds were issued. Apologies delivered. And mine? It was the largest. Dolores came to my door personally. She handed me a check with a soft smile and kind eyes. "I know it doesn't undo what happened," she said, "but I hope it's a start." I didn't expect the money. I didn't even need it. But the gesture meant everything. I used part of it to throw a real pool party. Not a rebellion, not a stunt, a celebration. Invitations were sent, ground rules were printed, clearly. Food was grilled. Music played low and warm in the background. The glow-in-the-dark effect? Yeah, I brought it back. Just a hint this time. Enough to shimmer in the water. Not enough to stain anyone's soul. Neighbors showed up smiling. Kids laughed without fear of citations. And for once, no one was looking over their shoulder. It felt honest. And maybe, for the first time since I moved in, it felt like home. Part 20. Still water, and a silence that finally belonged to me. Weeks passed. No flyers, no angry posts, no mysterious violations in the mailbox. Karen was gone. Some said she sold her house. Others claimed she moved to another HOA where, rumor has it, she tried to take over the board within 2 weeks. I didn't follow up, didn't care. Her name faded from the group chat. Her clipboard legacy quietly deleted. And the story? Well, the story lived on. At barbecues, people would retell it like a suburban legend, each version more ridiculous than the last. Some swore the slime glowed so bright it could be seen from a drone. Others claimed Karen dove in on purpose, thinking it was a spa treatment. I never corrected anyone. Let the myth grow. Let her stay frozen, in fluorescent memory. One evening, I sat alone, by the pool. Drink in hand. Dog curled up by my feet. The water was calm again, crystal clear, still. Music played softly from the speaker, just enough to keep the quiet from feeling too deep. A neighbor waved from across the street. I waved back. That was life now. Simple, honest, uncomplicated. I dipped my hand into the pool, just to feel it. Cool, steady. It slid between my fingers like silk. Peace, fragile as ever, but finally mine. Because what I learned is this. You don't need to shout to win. You don't need to fight fire with fire. Sometimes, all you need is a good plan and a bucket of glowing slime.